Last week in Michigan politics, as leaders reflect on the passage and a new challenge to their state budget deal, how the impact of no deal on Capitol Hill could be coming to West Michigan. Plus, the state releases their report from hundreds of audits across Michigan of its 2024 November election. We take a look at what they found. And indoctrination or inclusivity, as the State Board of Education could look to change its health and sex education standards for the first time in roughly 20 years. We hear from both sides of the debate. I'm Josh Alburtus, and this is your 13 on Your Side Rundown. And we begin with budget talk. Governor Gretchen Whitmer was in Kalamazoo Monday. She was with lawmakers of both parties talking about a new state law that she says will preserve Medicaid in Michigan. That appearance in Kalamazoo was on one of the bills approved into law last week in connection to the budget. That had to do with state Medicaid funding and keeping that money flowing. It's changing what's called the insurance provider assessment, essentially a medical tax on providers, according to the state. That money goes towards state Medicaid funding, and it's estimated the state gets over $600 million a year from it. Because Congress passed the One Big Beautiful Bill over the summer, changes needed to be made to keep the state's IPA law up to date with federal requirements, to keep federal match money flowing and stop a big hole that would have been blown in state Medicaid funding.
Without our action, we were at risk of losing $2.7 billion in Medicaid funding. I don't think it's possible to overstate how harmful that would have been to our citizens, our hospitals, the people in the white coats who keep us all safe and healthy and attend to us when we are in a crisis.
The puzzle that is the state budget could have yet another piece to fill, given a lawsuit out from the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association against the new 24% wholesale tax on marijuana. It was a vital part of lawmakers' roads funding plan, which was central to the budget. The tax, set to come into effect in the new year, has been expected to raise over $400 million in road funding. While in Kalamazoo, we also spoke with the leaders of both legislative chambers to get their thoughts and what they may be prepared to do if the tax was struck down in court.
If we need to cross that bridge, we have a lot of different options that we could take. Again, it would require some negotiation with the Republican-led House and the Democratic-led Senate and the governor's office, but I'm confident that we could cross that bridge in a productive way if we need to.
If it's overturned in court, the Democrats were the ones that wanted new revenue. I showed with the House Republicans how we could do this all by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. So my proposal, if it falls, would be let's go back and let's continue to make cuts to waste, fraud, and abuse, and we can fund our roads that way.
But while those state leaders may have gotten their deal over the finish line, the lack of a deal on Capitol Hill has given way to more than 2 weeks of a federal government shutdown. With services and pay in question for many, we also asked those two top leaders you just heard from about the situation in Washington.
We faced a lot of those same pressures at the state level, and what I decided to do in the House Republicans is we passed a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open while we finished up the details. I'd like to see the federal Congress do that too. If this shutdown continues any longer, a lot of the funding that the state relies on from the federal government is going to go away, and that will have vast implications on the state.
I certainly hope that they have the maturity to come together in a bipartisan way like we were able to here in Michigan, to really put the people of our country first. It's been very troubling to watch that. I think that as we move along through our budget, there are a lot of things that are in place that will continue to operate from the federal level, but we are seeing and hearing from our constituents about multiple ways in which they have to wait, or their issues are not being resolved because of the government shutdown.
Amid the shutdown, food assistance for millions of Americans could be on the line. Here in Grand Rapids, one nonprofit that supports people with mental illness and homelessness says that nearly all their clients could lose their SNAP benefits if the shutdown continues. 13 on Your Side's Kiara Patterson heard from that nonprofit and has the details.
I don't know how to tell them that, hey, that card that you have, that you get all of your food from, that's not going to work next month.
Across the country, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, could soon run out of funding. Federal officials say money is only guaranteed through October, and if the shutdown continues, November benefits for more than 40 million Americans may be delayed. Here in Grand Rapids, Abby Stoppa with the Servant Center says nearly all of her clients rely on SNAP to eat.
That is going to affect every person that we serve. We serve 276 people. We're a small agency when you look at it from that aspect, because 1 in 8 people nationwide are on SNAP benefits due to food insecurities.
The nonprofit serves adults with mental illness, homelessness, and people living at the poverty line. Kyle Hamlet with Servant Center says losing about $280 a month in money for food would leave many with nothing.
When you disrupt their routine, and they already don't have a real good grasp or understanding of money or how their funds work, that can create a lot of anxiety for them, a lot of questions.
Servant Center runs entirely on donations, and covering those lost food benefits would cost about $80,000 a month, money they don't have.
So we are going to reach out to all of our local food banks and see what their capacity looks like. Can they be on a list as a resource for us to direct people to?
Stoppa says they're also urging neighbors to help however they can, donating food, funds, or time.
We need to band together. Right now is a time that we need to support one another and not create any divide. There are individuals that are in need, and if you have the ability, please lend a hand.
With a schedule effective next month, the Muskegon County Airport and airline Denver Air Connection that they work with will offer 2 daily trips to Chicago on most days. But the county and airline rely on federal funding. 13 on your side's Micah Cho has the details on the millions that keeps the program running and how the airport is doing during this shutdown.
It's called Essential Air Service, and it's a federal subsidy meant to keep commercial airlines running at rural airports like Muskegon counties. Now, even if funding does lapse, Denver Air Connection has said that it shouldn't impact their services.
We're real happy to have Denver Air on our team because this shutdown kind of highlights in real time their dedication to small communities like Muskegon.
From twice daily airline service to the TSA checkpoint and the air traffic control tower, the Muskegon County Airport has had consistency so far throughout the federal government shutdown. Ken Nefting is the airport's director.
In these government shutdowns, nobody has a crystal ball that can see beyond days or even a week. So we play it by ear. As of now, no long-term concerns.
Denver Air Connection and the airport's partnership rely on essential air service funding, providing commercial airline service to rural airports like Muskegon counties. On Sunday, funding for EAS was set to lapse. However, $41 million was recently allocated to keep the service going. According to the U.S. Department of Transportation, the funding is enough to extend the program until early November. Even before the money was announced, Denver Air Connection said in an October 6th statement that the shutdown would not impact their operations. For an airport that still has 21 federal employees still showing up to work, Nefting says they're thankful.
So the message we should be sending is highlighting the human sacrifice in this. You do have people that are coming to work every day. Will they eventually get paid? Yes. When is that going to be? That's the question.
In Muskegon County, I'm Micah Cho for 13 on your side.
And at Gerald R. Ford International Airport here in Kent County, a video of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem blaming Democrats for the federal shutdown was not playing as of earlier this week. The spokesperson with the airport confirmed that to 13 on your side on Tuesday. The Ford Airport is among several airports across the country deciding not to play the video. In it, Noem says in part, quote, Democrats in Congress refuse to fund the federal government. And because of this, many of our operations are impacted and most of our TSA employees are working without pay. A statement from the Ford Airport did not reference Noem's mentioning of Democrats in the video, but told us they have not experienced significant disruptions to operations. The airport reminds travelers to stay updated on their flight status through the airline website or mobile app. And on the lakeshore in Grand Haven, the community is supporting the Coast Guard during the government shutdown. 13 on Your Side's Callie Lichter spoke to the leadership from the Grand Haven Coast Guard Festival on how they're supporting members up and down the coast.
When a Mayday goes out on the water, you can always count on the Coast Guard to help. But during the government shutdown, West Michigan is doing their part to keep coasties on the job. Just because the government is shut down, the Coast Guard is still out reporting for duty. That's why the Grand Haven Coast Guard Festival is partnering with the Coast Guard Chief Petty Officers Association to collect donations for Coast Guard members as they work without pay.
You don't know when you're going to get paid again. You've got a family. It's a little stressful. So this eases that stress so they can do their jobs for us and support us like they always do.
Executive Director of the Coast Guard Festival, Commander Tracy Riley, says the donations will help the members get through the difficult time. Starting Monday, non-perishable donations can be dropped off from 10 to 3 at the Coast Guard Festival office. These donations are everything from canned vegetables to gift cards. Anything to help the members as they work through the shutdown.
It's not just at festival time. If you say the Coast Guard needs anything in this town, everybody shows up. So we're real appreciative of that.
Monetary donations can be dropped off at any time through the mail slot. Riley says it's heartwarming to see the donations they've received so far, with these items helping members up and down the West Michigan coast.
Chief Petty Officers Association will disperse from Michigan City up to Manistee because we have crews that are on duty and working at all those places. So.
She says the donations will not stop until the government shutdown does.
It's just wonderful, but this is who Grand Haven is. This is what they do. And this is how the festival tries to support the Coast Guard.
Starting Tuesday, donations will also be accepted at the Grand Haven Coast Guard Station. To find the exact times and locations for donations, you can head to our website, 13onyourside.com. In Grand Haven, I'm Callie Lichter, 13 on Your Side.
The state has now released results from what it says are hundreds of audits across the state from last year's general election. Coming up, we dive into what they found and what it may say about the integrity of our system. The state has released a report on nearly 500 audits across the state of the 2024 general election in Michigan. They used 3 types of statewide reviews: a state-led recount, a statistical audit, and a post-election procedural audit. The statewide ballot audit showed a 33-vote difference between hand and machine counting. According to the report, all of the audits showed the election was safe and accurate. The Michigan Bureau of Elections adds that the audit showed that poll workers and other election officials upheld regulations and followed required guidelines. The state adds that the 2024 election was the 3rd consecutive election with a record turnout. And the Michigan State Board of Education is considering changes to health and sexual education standards for the first time since 2007. The new standards would include lessons that some critics are calling indoctrination, while advocates are saying it promotes inclusivity. It's important to note that these proposed changes are just guidance on what schools in the state can teach. What the sex ed curriculum ends up being is decided at the district level. According to the state, a sex education advisory board made up of at least 50% parents will recommend, and the local school board decides. These proposed changes would broaden what is allowed to be taught in schools. Some of the new topics allowed, according to our reporting, would be gender identity, sexual orientation, consent, and biological sex. Board members and the interim state superintendent debated over whether these new topics would be explicit to sex education, which parents can opt their children out of at no penalty, or if they would be in general health courses, which are a requirement to graduate.
Identity is not an instructional objective at any age grade. There are no identity lessons in grades K through 5, just kindness, inclusion, personal safety, and tell a trusted adult guidance. Middle school students may encounter glossary level definitions to help them understand language that they hear already or see, paired with lessons on consent, bystander action, and respectful communication. High school standards build on these foundations by teaching applied skills in healthy relationships, consent rights, responsibilities, and how to seek help.
And while deep dives into topics like gender identity and sexual orientation would only happen during sex education instruction, Republican State Board of Education member Tom McMillan argued essentially it blurs the line.
I'm glad that there is confirmation that sex ed is woven into these health standards. We need to stop and send it back, make maybe some changes to 2007, but not this. I mean, we're going from 13 pages to over 50 pages. And a lot of it is left-wing ideology, and it's inappropriate.
Both Republicans on the board have voiced heavy opposition to the changes. Most of the public comment also was opposed to the changes at that meeting, but there were a handful of supporters that spoke. A little bit harder. The board has not yet voted on the proposed changes to the standards, but indicated that vote would likely come during one of their next two meetings in November or December. And for the second time, city leaders in Grand Rapids have turned down renaming a local street after a teenager killed by gun violence last year. Why the decision was made, that's next. For a second time, Grand Rapids leaders are declining to rename a street after a teenager killed by gun violence last year. 13 on your side's Callie Lichter has details of the latest attempt and how the teenager's family continues to look for ways to honor his life.
For a second time, the city of Grand Rapids has declined renaming a street after Amelia Penn, a teen whose life was lost to gun violence last summer. This time it was Delaware, where Penn lived. Last time it was Umatilla Street, a few blocks south of here, where Penn was killed. A second attempt to rename a Southeast Grand Rapids street in honor of a teen lost to gun violence was declined by the city earlier this week. Amelia Penn was just 15 years old when he was shot and killed on Umatilla Street in June of last year. His father, Corey Penn, petitioned to rename Umatilla in honor of Amelia this summer, which was met with community pushback.
You guys are going to open up a can of worms you can't close. We don't need a sign to validate violence.
It brings back too much memories of what happened right there on that street.
And ultimately declined due to criteria and community feelings. Now Penn is asking to rename Delaware Street Southeast to Amelia Penn Way, which is the street where he lived. A letter to the city engineer Tim Berkman from Penn says in part, "We now have over 2,000 online signatures and 400 physical signatures. I've spoken directly with GRPD Chief Eric Winstrom, who confirmed his support and that of the department." Second Ward Commissioner Melinda Yasasi said at the October 7th Community Development Committee meeting that it's difficult to take everyone's feelings into account.
On what that policy says is somebody who's made contributions during their lifetime, which is hard to have that discussion with somebody and regarding their child. Everybody's life is important.
She also says why go through the same process if it would have the same outcome.
To not move it forward would be the same outcome, say if there was a new process. So why would we have somebody go through that process if we were going to do the same thing?
She suggested other ways to honor all lives lost to gun violence in the city. In a city agenda action request letter dated the same day, it reads in part that the request does not meet required conditions for approval, and we will not further process this request. The idea of creating a memorial for lives lost to gun violence in the city has been brought up in committee and commission meetings since the renaming effort began. In Grand Rapids, I'm Callie Lichter, 13 on your side.
And Grand Rapids leaders are eyeing another riverfront site for redevelopment. The city is asking developers to submit proposals for the former Naval and Marine Corps Reserve Center. That's on Monroe Avenue Northwest, north of Ann Street, just steps away from Riverside Park. The city is hoping to demolish a building that's on the 3.5-acre site, and they want to put green space, housing, a community center, and possibly other amenities in its place. There's no timetable yet for the project. And in Ottawa County, getting to emergencies faster in Georgetown Township, leaders have been looking at different options to improve response times. Earlier this week, after a lengthy debate, the Georgetown Township Board decided to move forward with a recommendation from the Township Fire Department that requires 6 full-time fire employees. 13 on your side's Nick Nelson has the details on that decision.
DeWitt?
Yes.
Trustee Veldink?
Yeah.
Trustee Schwalm?
Yes.
Trustee Kelly?
Yes.
All in favor.
The Georgetown Township Board chose to go forward with hiring 2 additional full-time staff members, bringing its total full-time staff up to 6, to fill the gap once Ottawa County ends its paramedic services.
Part of tonight's debate and vote is about how to, fill that gap, right? That need that's arisen now by virtue of the county's decision.
The decision was welcomed by several members of the Georgetown community.
I'd like to thank every one of you guys for making the decision you made tonight. I think it's a huge step forward into the future of public safety.
Other proposals were put forward by Life EMS to provide a medical first response unit for the township. Fire staff say they believe the benefits of expanding the fire force outweighs outsourcing to Life EMS.
There's nothing against Life EMS, but they bring one sole singular service to the table where our folks, as it has been discussed, there's a lot of other things that our folks can do during the downtime as township employees.
Another hot button issue addressed was a local 55% increase in water rates in Georgetown Township. The board agreed on a resolution to give residents a credit for payments made in the previous quarter. However, that rate hike is still taking effect. A state agency has announced their 2025 conference for women veterans will now be rescheduled. But the original cancellation of the event had already sparked outrage and what some felt to be a lack of respect. After the break, what vets and supporters had to say on the steps of the state capitol about that initial cancellation the same day that decision to reschedule was made. The Michigan Veterans Affairs Agency announced Tuesday they would reschedule this year's Women Veterans Conference after initially canceling it. But that morning, women veterans held a rally in Lansing protesting that original cancellation and demanding respect they felt they were due.
We are strong. Yes, we are.
Passions running high.
We are resilient. Yes, we are!
Women veterans and supporters on the steps of the state capitol Tuesday, sharing their service experience and why they say respecting women veterans matters.
Not only did I go into the Army, but I went into a male-dominated job.
We don't share a lot, but amongst us, we help each other.
It's why Lorena Black from Metro Detroit and Teresa Robinson from Rockford gathered them here.
We both had situations where people will come up to us and say, "Oh, did your husband serve?" If we're wearing an Army retired shirt or Navy, and that leads to women feeling invisible.
And they feel respect has gotten better. But what they say happened this past week was a major setback.
At first I was like, this is a joke, right? Because we're a week out. How could that even happen?
Last Tuesday, they said, they were told by the state's Veterans Affairs Agency their 2025 Michigan Women Veterans Conference had been canceled due to state budget changes.
They had worked up the courage to be able to go to this conference and see other women and talk to other women that had served. That's what this conference means to women veterans.
According to the House Fiscal Agency's analysis of the final budget deal, $1.7 million in general fund money was eliminated from the MVAA's administration and operations. For these veterans, it's not just about what the conference offers, but respect.
This conference was a chance for women to be seen. Canceling it a week before is like an oxymoron, somebody said to me. It's a contradiction. It's saying, we see you, but
not so much.
Not so much.
In a statement posted Tuesday, the MVAA addressed the cancellation, apologizing for what it said was a mistake in not engaging with appropriate leadership and stakeholders. They were working, they said, to reschedule the conference.
Today, we show Michigan and the nation that we are organized, that we are powerful, and we are done waiting.
13 on Your Side was told veterans were still planning to meet this weekend on their own, when they would have otherwise been at the event.
Yes, we can!
In Lansing, Josh Alburtus, 13 on Your Side. And that's the rundown for your week in Michigan politics. Be sure to keep up with all the top political stories of the day, both on air and online at 13onyourside.com.